very good morning guys, and welcome back to the channel. On this session you find me at the amazing Merrington Carp Fishery situated in Shropshire, a complex of 3 lakes, and I've nested up on the actual main lake itself. But do you know what, finally buds are on the trees, the new reeds are starting to push through and spring is in the air, and it feels absolutely amazing. And with that, those carp are starting to stir, they're starting to visit new areas of the lake, everything is starting to wake up. So in this video we're going to talk about spring tactics, my go-to methods for catching carp this spring. So we're back in the swim now, we're going to put the kettle on, have a brew and talk about those all-important tips, hints, tactics to help you catch more carp this coming spring. If you're only So here we are, Merrington Carp Fishery, probably one of my favourite day ticket waters. It's such a mature complex now. To be fair, I was here when they dug the Hayes Lake. I had amazing access to when the lake was completely empty, and it was just a privilege to be here for the stocking, seeing all the fish going in, being able to walk on the gravel spots that people now actually are trying to find with their leads. So who knows, we might do a session over on the Hayes in the sort of coming springtime and have a go on for some of the Hayes Lake. There is some monsters in there as well at the moment and some really, really nice ones. So we'll stick a pin in that one for sure. But we're here today to talk about spring tactics. And do you know what, spring can be just as tricky as winter. I've fished all this winter, and to be fair, the winter's been very kind to me. I've had not a bad winter. I've caught quite a few fish, a number of 30-pounders as well. So, you know, touch wood, it's been a good winter for me, and I'm hoping that sort of rolls into the spring. But spring can be just as tricky as the winter periods. And without doubt, this leads me on to my first tip, which is 100% location. So location, probably the most number one thing in carp angling is location. You know, you can only catch them if they're in front of you. If your swim is void of fish, you're staring at a blank before you even start. Spring can be very tricky as well. You know, they're only just waking up. You know, I've had a look today, the temperature of the water is just over 8 degrees. 3 weeks ago this water temperature was 5, so that's a big jump in temperature. With that, the carp are now going to start moving about more. As soon as they start moving, they'll start feeding. So the first 2 things carp will be looking for is food and warmth. The warmth is the thing that's going to kick them off to start with. So in terms of location, the first thing I'll be looking for when arriving at the venue is where is the sun going to be sort of penetrating for most of the day. Have a look at those areas first. A massive edge is margins. This is the time of year in the spring, as the carp are waking up, they'll be moving into those shallower areas. It's the shallows that are going to be being warmed first. The sun's going to penetrate that water quicker, so those shallows will be the first thing I'll be looking at. So 100% do not ignore the marginal shelf. Have a look there. Again, sort of the old dying reeds as well. It's those areas that are going to hold bits of food for the carp still. They will venture there, 1, to get the warmth, and 2, looking for some food as well. So definitely check out the margins. Another area as well would be islands or sort of marginal areas where you have tree branches growing into the water. That is where a carp will be hanging out. They absolutely love snags at this time of year. As that water is warming by the sun itself, you've got, you know, if you've got 2 or 3 foot of water with branches going into the water, I guarantee that's where the fish will be hanging out during the daytime, especially with those snags. You know, that's going to be holding sort of all your bugs and your bits of food and stuff. As all that life starts to kick off as well, the carp know this, so they will venture there to try and find a free meal. Again, with that water being warmed as well, it's going to be a proper haven for carp. So definitely look at marginal areas, especially when you've got old dying reeds from last year and you've got those branches as well going into the water. That would absolutely scream carp. I've got an island straight out in front of me today to my right hand side, and you can see there all the snags growing into the water there. Although these are absolutely fantastic features, what I'd probably do first is cast up with a bare lead. Make sure you can pull that lead away easily. It's ensuring that there is no underwater snags that will get you into trouble. Without question, the carp's welfare has to come first at all times. Another key area as well would be raised bars, finding those shallower spots which might be in the middle of the lake themselves, because once again that sort of shallower water will warm the quickest, and again the carp feel that instantly. So again, don't ignore those shallower spots which might not be in the margins but could be out in the actual pond itself. Another key aspect in location would be wind direction. That plays a huge part in the carp's habits as well. So once you've chosen your certain day ticket or the syndicate water that you're actually visiting this spring, get on Google Earth, work out your north, south, east, west, and what swims dictate the wind direction into those swims. Find out the swims that are going to be in the teeth of an easterly, and so too work out the swims that are going to benefit from the warmer winds from the south and the southwest. Those swims I'll be looking at as well, especially the springtime. If you've got warm temperatures and a southwesterly wind, definitely look at those swims that are going to be sort of benefiting from that warm wind pushing in, the sun on those margins. That would be an absolute proper go-to swim for me if I was working that out on my chosen venue. So definitely check out wind direction. Which leads us now on to the second tip, which would be PVA. So moving on to my spring tactic number 2 has to be PVA. This stuff has revolutionised carp fishing since its release, and I generally don't know where we'd be without it. A lot more carp has been caught since PVA sort of first come on the market. So today I've got the stick mix on my right hand rod, which is up against the margin, and the beauty of the stick mix for me, it is just the perfect mouthful. It is that, you know, that packed full of attractors, one mouthful of food in the right spot. It's just the perfect scenario for spring fishing. And what I like about the spring sort of the stick mix as such is that you can literally make it your own. You can put whatever you want in there. The stick mix that I'm using today, I literally made it up before I came out here. So when I was in my garage, just before I left, I whizzed up a load of the bug boilie there, crumbed it up into like a fine dust. To that I've added a little bit of rock salt. I've then also complemented that with some of our mini crayfish pellets. Now those are absolutely micro. They're that micro, the hook point cannot sort of get caught on them at all. That's what I like about them, because they're so small. Added those in as well. And then to those 3 ingredients, I've just topped that off then with a little bit of liquid, that being the bug food. And I've purposely made it the food because it's now the spring, the carp are now searching for a little bit more food source. And I just feel having that food source attractor in the stick mix is absolutely essential. I'll whiz all that up as well, so give it a good shake. And that is the end result there, a really lovely, fluffy sort of stick mix, packed full of attractors and good food signals as well. And that's all compressed into a little tiny stick there, no bigger than sort of an inch long, threaded down my hook link onto the rig itself, and as you can see there, it's absolutely perfect. And that's the beauty of stick mixes, you can really mix it up and go to town on it and proper create your own sort of, you know, mix that you find favourable or you've got your sort of confidence in, whether that be a brand of boiler that you're using, certain liquids you know that work well. The only thing I'd say about a stick mix is just make it as fine as you can, because once you're pulling that hook into it, you don't want the hook point sort of going into a food item, and then obviously when the fish then is picking up the bait, you want the hook point completely exposed at all times so it can hit home in the bottom lip. You don't want it sort of hindered by bits of food that could be sort of attached on the actual hook point. So for me, the stick mix has to be really fine. And you can play around with different hook baits like I have there. You can make them really bright, you can tip them off, you can just fish it as a match the hatch as well. You can put a little shot on it, and I like to have a little pop-up on mine and put a little shot on the hair between the hook bend of the hook and the actual food, put a little sort of BB shot there, and that just sits the bait up just a little bit above the stick mix. As it melts there, the hook bait, if you like, is just a little bit higher. I've had some great results on that over the years, fishing it that way. So for me, when I'm fishing stick mixes, I'll always favour that method of having a sort of shot on the hair, if you like, just under the hook bait. I just think it wafts a little bit nicer with a pop-up. You can use wafters as well. But I do prefer like a pop-up that just sits a little tiny, literally a couple of mil above the actual stick mix. And once that's melted out of the way, for me, there you go. It's just a perfect food parcel. One mouthful and hopefully one chance of a carp in the bag as it comes down to snaffle on all that goodness. Again, another great tactic is PVA bags. At this time of year, I don't think there's a better method as well in terms of pinging it about different areas to showing fish as well. And the beauty of the PVA bag, it's always fishing. You don't have to worry about tangles. You can cast it out knowing, even if you've got old lying weed beds, the PVA bag will find its way through. It'll open up once it's melted, and the hook bait and your hook and all that is ready and primed for that pickup. And that is the beauty of the PVA bag. I would shy away from using sort of high oil content. I know summertime people like to sort of squeeze the you know, a lot of liquids in there, a lot of high oils, but springtime that water is still cold, so I would sort of refrain back from adding lots of oils to it and do a more suppler approach. Like I say, the food bait liquids are very good, the smoke is very good, but the high oil stuff like the salmon oil, trout oil, that sort of stuff, tuna oil, I'd leave that until the summertime, so it sort of helps. The oils always sort of congeal in cold water. You'll find oils work far more better in warmer climates, in warmer water. So I'd leave them for the summer and just concentrate in the spring on the food source oils more. A great choice in a PVA bag is maggots as well. Tipping the baits with a few red ones that give a bit of movement, a little bit of visual. Now, the only tip I'd give you on using maggots inside a PVA bag is make sure you dust them off. When you pierce a maggot, you'll get the sort of maggot juice, if you like. Unfortunately, that is not PVA friendly. That will melt the bag. So just before I put the hook bait in, I'll sort of dip the maggots themselves in a little bit of sort of really fine maize or a little bit of ground bait just to dry all that off. I'll then put that in the PVA bag. That won't melt it. That's ready to be wrapped up. That'll dissolve, as you can see there. The maggots become exposed, and that does look like the perfect PVA bag. Little bit of movement, little bit of colour, ideal for the PVA bag use. So moving on to the last, and in no means least, it has to be the humble zig rig, a phenomenal spring tactic that has caught so many big fish as well from up and down the UK, all over Europe. Zig fishing is definitely something to have in your armoury this spring, and it's all down to basically the water columns, and again, it's those water temperatures. Air pressure plays a part as well, so the zig really does come into its own in the spring when you've got those sort of high pressures where they're sitting sort of mid-water as well. And again, because that water, that the sun is penetrating that water, it's warming up the upper layers first. The fish will find their ways up there. They'll always go where the warmest part of the lake is during the spring. They'll either be looking for the warmth and the food, and the zig is absolutely perfect for that. So have a play around with your colours, with your sort of like your reds and blacks and yellows and blacks and reds and yellows, whatever you want. There's all manner of things. Being at Merrington, I've got about 7 foot of water in front of me there, so I'll be quite happy fishing that on a fixed zig rig, sort of 3.5 foot off the lead itself, in the middle of the water columns there, so I'll be quite happily fishing that. If I was fishing deeper lakes, I'd probably move over to the adjustable zig rig kit. That is a little float, and you literally just peel line off it, so you've still got 3 foot of sort of zig link material, if you like, off the actual float, and then from that you just peel it off like you would like a marker float, and you can adjust the depth accordingly. So if you're fishing 15-20 foot lakes, you can still mess around with different depths. It's really easy as well to change. If you know, after a couple of hours you can fish at sort of 10 foot, 12 foot, back down to 7 foot. They are really handy, so definitely have a look at the adjustable zig rig kit. Phenomenal thing, and definitely worth having in your armory. And then just play around with those colors, as we said before. If you've got sort of plastic bands on your water or no artificial baits on your water, obviously you can use the candy sticks from DNA. You can glug them up using different liquids and things like that to add with those attractors. So yeah, for me, that would be number 3. Get on the zigs as well. Definitely worth having one on one rod. And that sort of concludes my go-to top 3 spring tips for this time of year. And hopefully you can put some of them into your own angling, which will help you bank more carp this coming spring. Once again, guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the content. If you do like it, please give us a like and a subscribe, and we will see you on the next video.